So, the Cleveland Browns head coach, Kevin Stefanski, has an interesting rule when it comes to fights in a joint process. So, here's what his rule is: if it involves a starter, he now has to play the upcoming preseason game. If a backup who is fighting for a roster spot gets in a fight, he can now not play in the upcoming preseason game, losing a big opportunity. Especially with only 3 preseason games, that is a huge opportunity missed. A unique rule to prevent fights, which we've seen so many of them in camp. And we have. I mean, the Ravens and Commanders, it was like going left and right. Mark Andrews body slammed somebody to the ground. Tylan Wallace punched Emmanuel Forbes in the face, which I still don't understand because when he punched him in the face, he had a helmet on. Stop punching players in the helmet, please. If you're an NFL player, listen, stop doing it. It's the stupidest thing you can do. If you want to punch someone, when they take their helmet off. If you're still ticked off, then take your swing. Do not swing with their helmet on. You're just gonna break your hand, and then guess what? Now, according to Kevin Stefanski, you're gonna be missing a game, or you're gonna be playing a game because of it. You're gonna be punished for it. And again, listen, fights is just typical things that happen in any joint process, any training camp. Literally, if there isn't a fight, I don't know what's wrong with your team, because you're the most competitive players on earth on one field together, whether they're training, practicing, whatever. And yeah, they're gonna fight, especially when you joint practice together. But again, this is interesting too, because how does this go for the other side? So, like, for example, if I don't know, your Browns and the Eagles were joint practice together, right? If Brandon Graham, after the play is over, comes up and punches Deshaun Watson right in the face, right? Let's say he had his helmet off, right? Brandon Graham was just ticked off. He got beat on one play. He's not happy. He clocks Deshaun in the face. Does this still situation goes through? Because according to this, if he fights back and he fights, he's going to be punished for it. Or is it like, does Kevin Stefanski look at situational stuff and say, okay, based on this situation, this will be what happens? Because we did see a fight happen at Cleveland Browns training camp literally, what, around 2 weeks ago? 3 weeks ago? Yeah, 3 weeks ago. And it was as simple as one player, after the play was over, slapped the guy in the helmet, ran away, and it escalated to this huge fight that really did not need to happen at the end of the day, right? And that fight just got out of hand. Now, again, according to Kevin Stefanski, I don't know if this is a rule he's now implementing now or moving forward. I'm not sure. Now, that was, as it says right here, not in a joint process. Kevin Stefanski has a rule if there's a fight in a joint process. So that's not a joint process. So I'm going to guess if that happens outside of a joint process, then it's okay. Like, it's a fight, whatever, things happen. But when it comes to in a joint process, that's an interesting situation because, again, that's where competitive players are more likely to fight. So, again, it does make sense to try to avoid those fights. Because, listen, at the end of the day, those fights, it looks bad for your team. You're starting something when you really shouldn't be, and someone could get hurt. Someone could, do something stupid. There's no reason to escalate any situation when it comes to that to any level, right? But here's another thing, again, I still find interesting. So if you are a starter, right, if it involves the starter, so if the starting player on the Browns hits somebody, starts a fight, or, again, like I said, Brandon Graham clocks Deshaun Watson, and he fights back, he now has to play in the upcoming preseason game. Like, there has to be rules and regulations to this. There can't just be, like, a gray area, like, you want to fight, you're done, or you're playing. There has to be rules like, okay, if you win a fight and you did not initiate the fight, then you're fine. But if you initiate the fight, then absolutely out of rules. It's such a weird situation because I need him to explain this. There needs to be an explanation. Because I guess, or he could just say, like, listen, if some player comes up to you and hits you in the face, you walk away. Because I don't want you there fighting. Well, what if the player keeps coming at you and doesn't give up? Because you have to keep in mind that most fights that happen in training camp and preseason, they aren't just like, even if one player just goes, clocks somebody, right? They don't usually just like stop. I hate to say this, but usually when the fights happen, they continue. They're not just like, oh yeah, hey, ha ha ha, okay, like I clocked you, and then even if the guy hits back, it continues. But even if the player walks away, that player usually will keep going after that guy because he's still ticked off. And one shot on him or one hit on him is not going to do anything. Now, if he clocks him, maybe he'll kind of calm down. But we've seen many times in training camp, especially joint practice, where one player will punch someone and he'll keep punching him. He won't stop, even if the player isn't fighting back. So, this is such a weird gray area. I would love to see how this would work. And again, like I said, so for the player has to play in the upcoming game, there's no stipulation on how long that has to be, so maybe it's like a drive or two. That's not really a big deal for a starter, right? At the end of the day, it's like, okay, well, you were supposed to get a rest day, but you're going to be playing. Whatever. For a backup, though, this is really, I don't like this. Because, listen, again, a backup, you're fighting for a roster spot. What if a bunch of your guys got in the fight? Let's say it was like 7 or 8 guys got in the fight. Are you just now going to play no one in the preseason game? Like, there's so many ways that this could just go wrong. And I hate to be that guy, right? Because, I'm reading too much into it, right? I'm looking way too much into this whole concept. But listen, there's so many different ways that this is not a good rule. Because now, let's say, for example, you have a group of guys getting in a fight, right? And let's say it's all your backup corners, all your backup linebackers, all their guys, whatever. And you're all in a fight. Now you go into preseason game, you're like, we don't have any cornerbacks to play because every cornerback we had got into a fight today. There has to be some rules and stipulations. Maybe it's a per fight basics, but then that's not fair to everybody. It gotta be fair to everybody. You know what, man? I'm looking way too much into this. This is what happens when I start talking about the Browns. I look too far into this, and I'm like, why is this not, why are you not explaining this, my man? You gotta explain this, Kevin. Kevin Stefanski, you gotta explain all these rules. But no, on a real note, though, it's interesting. Listen, you don't want fights to happen, and he's going to do everything he can as a coach here to avoid the fights from happening. So, gotta give him respect for that said reason, but if I could have one, like, give me 20 minutes on the phone call with you, Kevin, and I just want to ask all these questions. I want to know, what is your system for every question I'm asking? Guys, I'll be live on Saturday for the last and final Cincinnati Bengals game before the season ends. Peace out.